Ever wonder why a country might have two official names? Well, today we're going to dive into a really fascinating historical mystery. We're going to explore the story of a nation through its names, India and Bharat.
So yeah, this is the big question. You've probably heard both names, India and Bharat, used for the same exact place. But why? Is one just a nickname? Is one older than the other? To get to the bottom of it, we have to go on this incredible journey back through thousands of years of history.
And you know what? The clue is kind of hiding in plain sight. It's right there on the very first page of the Constitution of India. The first article kicks off with these really powerful words: India, that is Bharat, shall be a union of states. Now, this was no accident. It was a very deliberate, very official choice. And to understand why they made that choice, we need to unpack the story behind each of those names. So let's start by looking at the names that came from the inside, the names that the people actually living on the subcontinent gave to their own land. Before we even get to the names, you got to look at the geography, right? The Indian subcontinent is this huge piece of land. It's almost its own little world. You've got the towering Himalayas up north, acting like a giant natural wall, and then you have the huge Arabian Sea and the Bay of Bengal on either side. This really unique geography gave the people living there a shared sense of place, a single unified land that, well, needed a name.
The oldest name we know of is Sapta Sindhava. You can find it in the ancient text, the Rig Veda, and it means the land of the seven rivers. This name was for the northwest part of the subcontinent, a land that was famous and fertile because of the mighty Sindhu River and all the rivers that flowed into it. So yeah, it all started with the rivers.
But of course, Sapta Sindhava only described one part of this massive land. As people's understanding of the geography grew, they needed bigger names, names that could really capture the whole thing, from the mountains all the way down to the sea.
And that brings us to a really important name, Bharatavarsha. It means the country of the Bharatas. The Bharatas were this major group of people mentioned way back in the Rig Veda, and eventually their name grew so big it came to represent the entire subcontinent. What's so important here is that this name comes from a people, an identity that was born from within.
Here's another beautiful ancient name for you, Jambudvipa. This means the island of the jamun tree. How cool is that? A common, native fruit tree gave its name to the whole land. We even know that the great Emperor Ashoka used this very name to describe his empire about 2,500 years ago.
And this quote right here, it just perfectly shows how clear that geographical identity was even back then. It's from the ancient Vishnu Purana, and it gives a perfect definition. It's so simple. The land that's north of the ocean and south of the snowy mountains, that's the Himalayas, is called Bharata. I mean, that's a perfect description that's still true today. Okay, so we've looked at the names that came from within. Now let's flip the script. Let's look at the names that came from the outside, from visitors, from traders, from travelers who saw this incredible land. And this is where the story gets really interesting. The origin of the name India also starts with a river. And get this, it's the very same one we talked about before, the Sindhu River, which you probably know today as the Indus.
This is basically a game of telephone across history. It's so cool. First, you have the original name, Sindhu. Then, the ancient Persians, who were neighbors, had a tough time saying the S sound at the beginning of words, so it became Hindu. After them, the ancient Greeks learned about the land from the Persians, but they couldn't pronounce the H sound, so they dropped it and called the land Indoi. And from the Greek Indoi, it passed through Latin and finally became the English word we all know today, India.
And it wasn't just the Persians and the Greeks. You had Chinese travelers who also adapted Sindhu, calling the land Yintu. Later on, the Persians used the term Hindustan. And here's a super important point to remember. Back in those days, the word Hindu just meant the land and the people living around the Sindhu River. It was all about geography. It was not the name of a religion yet. So, now we have two very different stories, right? One is about a name that grew from the people and the land itself. The other is about a name that traveled all over the world, changing a little bit with every language that spoke it. This brings us right back to where we started. So let's just break it down. On one side, you've got names like Bharat, which are rooted in the people who live there. On the other side, you've got India, which is rooted in how foreigners heard the name of a huge, important river. Two completely different paths, two different histories, but both telling a true story about the very same land.
So what do you do? I mean, what do you do when you have two names and both have thousands of years of history and deep meaning behind them? When the leaders of modern India sat down to write their constitution, they had to answer that exact question. Which name do you pick? They chose both, and it was a brilliant move.
By writing India that is Bharat, they decided to honor the entire, complex, incredible history of the nation. They honored the story as told by its own people and the story as told by the rest of the world. It's like saying, yep, both of these stories are true and both are a part of who we are. At the end of the day, a name is never just a name, is it? It's a story. And having so many rich and different names just tells us that India's story is incredibly long, deeply interconnected, and absolutely amazing. It's a history told not just by one voice, but by many. Thanks for coming on this little journey with me.